That was easy. So here are some instructions to help guide you in activity 1. And feel free to chat with your group. This is not supposed to be like an independent exercise, so feel free to talk, and we'll be walking around.
I think it. So, what's it called? Give it like classes and IDs. Yeah. And then this one you can just go in that founder and think about you'll be able to see those. Or like, oh no, like how do I make it like this? Make such a nav bar shows up in each file. I think it might be that's a possible to yeah. Yeah. So we have it. So what they want, I didn't all of them. Shall be inside of so which one was that? Yeah. Yeah, just add a closing bracket for the nav bar here. And every time you put you know what the last so what do you yeah, so right now you want my website. Yeah. And then there will be a you write down the page. Okay, it's just so inside the div, you want to have bracket K. Yeah, I was trying to say. Open up this slide. Yeah, that's one of it's okay. It's that's the example. Yeah, no, it's he wraps it. And no, just add in the post and make sure to close out your okay. If it's actually being bigger. Yeah, no, I think it when I. Yeah, so. Yeah. So you have to. No, you just don't.
Hi.
This is the. Yeah.
How much do you have?
I tried to, I don't know. I need to watch on the website. How do you use?
Yeah. Wait, okay, I have. Let me show you. Yeah. This is an Oh, I do it. Oh, it is.
Oh, it's a command. Oh, nice. We just-
Right click? Right click and run it. Did you download it? Oh, it's right. These are not.
Oh, that's it. I got it.
Oh.
I was a program. Oh, I applied to this.
So can everyone give a thumbs up if you guys made some kind of progress in activity 1? Okay, great. Don't worry about finishing all of it. We're going to start live coding the solution for activity 1. And even if you guys don't get it now, we'll also be releasing the solutions at the end of the workshop so you can catch up on your own time after it. Okay, now I will start by going into the HTML CSS folder, and then I will make the index.html file. I'll make the add activity HTML file. And then I will add the last add trip HTML file. So now we'll go into index.html and put the HTML boilerplate code, which you can get by typing the exclamation mark and then clicking enter. Now within body, we'll be creating our navbar tag. Then we'll add ID equals navbar. And then within this div, we'll add another div. This div will have a class of title. And then we'll be making our second inner div, which will have a class of nav buttons. And then since this is our navbar, we need to have link tags, which is the A tag. So inside the class title div, we'll add a tag to refer back to our home page. So you'll have the opening A tag, and then you'll have the reference to our index.html. And then you'll have the name of the link, which is Hack Travels. And then following up for our nav buttons tag, we'll add two A tags. One will be for the add trip.html, and the other one will be for the add activity HTML file. Now we'll name this add trip. So you can just copy and paste this and then change it to the corresponding file. Then add activity for our second navigation link. So now outside of the navbar div, we'll now be creating our trip container div. And this div's purpose is to show our trip and activity view. So now I'll create a new div. And the class will be trip containers or trips container. And then within this div will be another div where the class is trip box. And then to put text into this div, we'll put an h3 tag. And then we'll make another div box with the same class. And then within this, we'll have a text called activities. And then that will be the solution code for the index.html. And to make it so that your navbar appears on every single page, you can copy and paste the navbar code into the top of each HTML file. So here I'll do the boilerplate again, and then I'll copy and paste it. And then you can run this index.html file by opening the file on your computer, or if you downloaded the extension, you can click the go live at the bottom of the browser. So here you can see this is our HTML file. The navbar is on top, but without any styling, of course, so it looks pretty plain right now, but we'll add styling to that later. And then you can see our trips and activities view on the bottom of the navbar. And then that concludes activity 1. So now we'll be going over CSS to make your website look really, really pretty.
So as you see in these two images, CSS is almost like an overlay on top of your HTML to make it so that it like looks pretty. I think the image with the lollipop is like literally perfect. And also like CSS is very finicky in that small changes in there can lead to, you know, some like major differences essentially. So like you change one thing, yeah, it'll definitely be modified. Thank you. So the first thing we'll talk about is like inline styling. So there's two ways that you could do CSS. Some people, like if you're a very like front end person, you'll probably have your CSS like extracted from your HTML. Like they'll obviously like still interact with each other, but like they'll be kind of more separated. But like honestly, a lot of engineers who are a little lazy will do something called like inline styling. So alongside your HTML, we'll have like CSS alongside it. So like for example, like having the style equal, you know, to the color red and like having the text aligned to the center, all of that is CSS. We honestly think sometimes that it's a part of HTML, but it's not. So these like two small changes turn this very vanilla HTML code to something that is red and also is centered to the center of the screen. And this is honestly like, and this is internal CSS or like something that would be kind of like on a separate page or yeah, on to a separate page. So as you can see right here, the color is red, text aligned to the center, but it does the same exact thing, even though it just looks different from each other.
And then this is external CSS, which is what we'll be doing. And as you can see in the index.html file, the style sheet is linked to styles.css. And this is how the CSS code is applied to our HTML files. And then as you can see, it is making the H2 element, which is the header element, red and center aligned text. Okay, next quiz question. What is the correct HTML for referring to an external style sheet? Does anyone want to try and make a guess? Let's see. It is B. So the code can be shown in the slide before where there's a link tag with the type of link and the reference to it. And that is how you would do an external CSS. So now we'll be moving on to our second activity where you'll be styling the nav bar you created in the HTML activity prior. So these are the instructions. From the fork code, you can see a styles.css file. And in the file, there are comments for the navbar styling. So everyone in this activity should follow the comments and use documentation or Google to try to style their navbar.
We're gonna keep this activity a little bit shorter than the previous one, so we'll give you guys about like 6 minutes. So yeah, make sure to talk in your groups as well and help each other out. 7:17 starting. Yeah, I said too. It's like a. Do you want me to take a slide? No, it's okay. You got those. What? It's just that it's fine. You know, there's some teachers who will like make you do the homework and then you come back with questions, right? Let me go over the code. Wait, the instructions are literally just linking it? No, and then oh wait, do you want to just tell them just to link it?
So before we get into step 2, let's just do step 1 where you link the style CSS to your index.html file.
There you go, yeah. We could put it after Flexbox.
Feel free to use prior slides as a reference when you're linking the styles.css.
Not after Flexbox.
No, because the Flexbox in nav is not really this one thing, it's just this row.
We'll give him one more.
Right after.
Do you have the Vercel still open? Like the deployed, like our code deployed, the final product?
I think I can open it.
Do you mind opening it?
Yeah.
Like use it as an example.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like the Vercel code. This one.
No, I don't know.
You don't have it open.
Can I get a raise of hands of who is done linking the style sheet to their index.html file? Okay, great. Then we'll be moving on to talk more about CSS.
Want it? Yeah, this would be our first part of the day.
So here is an example of CSS, and we will be covering an important topic of selectors, which is how you'll be applying individual CSS to each element, so that like not everything in your website is like the same color or something. So as you can see in the HTML, there's a top div and bottom div separated by its class. And there's a paragraph tag to put the text within the div. And then in the right side styles.css file, there's a div element selector. And this is putting a light green color on div elements. And you can see this applied on the top div. But then after that, we're now using a class selector called .bottom-div in the styles.css file. And for bottom div, we're making it light blue. So as you can see here, this is an important element of CSS, which is why it's called cascading style sheets. There's an order of importance of how style is applied. So you can see here that the style is applied on elements div, and then the class style is applied. So here the class styling has a higher order of importance. So more about selectors. You've probably seen us talk about this div has this class and this div has this ID. Why are we using class and ID? So the problem is that we want to select one specific element with the div tag and only style that tag instead of applying the style to all div elements, like what I was talking about before. So we want a special selector for that, which is what we will use here as class and ID. A class can be applied to multiple elements, but an ID can only be applied to one individual element. For the order of importance, the ID overrides class, while class overrides element. An element would just be a generic div selector. So here's another example of class versus ID, this is similar to the div that you guys coded in activity 1. So here the div has ID equals navbar, and the inner divs have a class, which is nav buttons, which has been applied to 2 elements. And then on the right side in the style sheet, you can see a ID selector using hashtag. And here we're doing display flex. And then for the class styling, for .nav-buttons, we'll be making the bold font. So this is how you'll use selectors, classes, and IDs to apply to your HTML files. So now we'll be going back to our second activity where you'll be styling the navbar. So everyone can go back to the styles.css file and follow along in the instructions in the comments to style the navbar.
It's just, yeah, it's just this part. This part. Really? Okay, we can move on to the next one. Yeah.
Like a little time we can try to save it. Because if we go tell the buttons, like they won't have to do the container.
Mhm.
Like, we can just do like this part. Like maybe just tell them like focus on like these parts more. the dot title. No, 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 because those don't use flex box.
Okay.
So one important CSS styling on the nav bar is something we call flexbox. We're going to be covering flexbox more in depth later, but if you guys are confused about the nav bar styling, you guys can feel free to start styling the nav buttons first, which is a much more straightforward CSS styling. You guys should use documentation such as the CSS documentation or even Google to try to find the rule sets that apply to the buttons to style them.
Show me. 2 minutes. Yeah. Oh God, I'm running late. Yeah, what time do we need to be done? Oh, yeah. Actually, we're fine. We're fine on time.
Oh, just live code.
Meaning?
CSS button. I don't know if the turnout would be correct. What's wrong with it?
We could do the live coding for just like at the end, for this like 2B. Yeah, we'll combine live coding for this one. Yeah, not this one. Or wait, do they have to do activity 3 today? Yeah. Yeah, we'll do a live coding here and then a live coding here.
The styling can be like,
Right, yeah.
or actually
really
maybe
simple.
simple now, because like, and it'll be like, yeah, the last second school, I think she only had like 5 minutes to go for the box. I think she wants it to be like,
A
that's why
bigger
she wants more in-depth one, that's why. Hey guys, sorry to cut you off a little bit early, but you might have been really kind of like confused about a couple of the terms that you found on your CSS style sheet. And one of them might be something called flexbox, or you might be seeing something called like flex on there. And that's what we're going to discuss in a little bit more detail. So let's be real, that HTML that we were writing before looked a little bit ugly. And it wasn't just the coloring, and let's be real, it's pretty easy to add colors. But it's the way the information is organized on the screen that's what's really visually attractive. So we use something called flexbox in order to rearrange elements on our screen. And let me first show you some examples of flexbox, and I'll be going over the different terms that we can use in flexbox. So as you can see right here, we have our class, and so we have trips container, and then we have trip box. Oh, speaking. Okay. So for trips container, as we can see over here, we have 3 things in here. We have display, justify content, and align items. So for display, we say that it's flexible, and then for justify content, we say it's center. And it's very like straightforward. By saying that we want to align the items to the center, that means we want our trips to be contained in the center. When we say that we want to justify justify content, that also refers to bringing content to the center of the screen. And now you might see something called flex. Yeah, it stands for flexible. That means like when we're adding items onto the screen, we want it to be flexible in accordance to other items that are going to be joined alongside it. So I know we opened up our Vercel app like a while ago, and like maybe you forgot how it looks like, but when you're adding trips to our website, you want to make sure that all the elements that you're adding to the screen dynamically, you want to make sure that they're not overlaying each other, or you don't want to make it ugly. So when you're adding something one by one, we want to make sure that it's flexible. And that's where Flexbox really comes, that's where it's highlighted. In addition, over here, you have something called Flex One. Feel free to search up what it is. I think Flex One literally like deals with the spacing in between lines, if I remember correctly. CSS is something that we really encourage you to explore by yourself, because the best way to learn something is obviously through trial and error. So while we are just going to give you definitions today, the purpose of these exercises and what we want you to take away from this is for you to go home and try out like each one of these. So here's our reference sheet, and we really recommend that you take a picture of this or save the slide for a rainy day. So here's a couple of the terms that we talk about in Flexbox and like reference to it. So we have flex direction, we have justify content, align items, and align content. So flex direction, as it says on the screen, it's going to be how items are lined up within the flex containers. So I think this image does a great job of showing like whether it's in rows or columns, that's how like flex direction is going to be taking care of items. Next, there's justify content. This aligns the items across the main axis. So as you can see right here, regardless of where the items are like put on the screen, you can see that they're aligned to the main axis. Align items will do this in a perpendicular direction. And align content will be more so the spacing in between the rows. And now here's another example. So, well, we won't probably use this for our app. This is like something called table. It looks like a table. But as you can see right here, this like, header 1, header 2, header 3, that like the image above right here looks very vanilla, but we're able to turn it into something very pretty by using CSS. And let me go to the next slide. So as you can see right here, our displays flex. The flex direction is in column. So if you remember flex direction, how items are lined up within the container. So column is obviously going to go in a column format. Justify content is going to be flex start, align items to the center. That's what keeps it in the center. And for styling the rows in particular, we change flex direction to row. So very straightforward, but honestly, there's so many ways to, create the same product. And we want you to go ahead and try out all of those things. Any questions, by the way? All right, now on to our like next activity, and we're gonna kind of like also be doing activity like 2A part with this, but we're gonna be implementing Flexbox in the nav bar, but also into the home page. So yeah, get started. We'll give you guys a little bit longer for this just because the other exercise got a little bit cut short. So take around 7 to 8 minutes to do this independently as well as work in a group. Good luck, guys.
So can everyone give a thumbs up, thumbs down, middle for how they're doing in the activity? Yeah, so it's no problem if you guys are still working on it. The solutions will be released at the end of the workshop. But for now, I'll start live coding the solution for activity 2A and 2B, which will be styling the nav bar and also the trips and activities view. So now I'll go to the styles.css file and then go down to the nav bar styling. So firstly, we'll add a background color to the nav bar. And this will be using the hex code that was given in the comments. And feel free to change this to whatever you want. And then now we'll be making this display flex, which is applying the flexbox styling to the nav bar. And this is what makes it so that it turns it into a strip, a navigation bar on top of the website. Now we'll be aligning the items vertically across the nav bar. And we'll do this with the help of justify content, align item, and also margin in between. So first we'll do justify content. And we'll do this using space between. Then we'll align the items to the center. And then for the margin bottom, we'll be adding a 35 pixel margin to it. And this will add a spacing to the bottom of the nav bar to make it wider vertically. And then we will be adding a padding to it. The function of padding is also to make the element wider on your screen. In this case, the padding is added all around from all sides, whereas the margin was only added on the bottom. So that is the navbar styling, and now we'll move on to the navigation links. So first we will change the font color to white by writing color : white. And then we will change the font size. We'll make this 25 pixels. And then we'll continue on to get rid of the text decoration. So text decoration is when you click a link and it turns purple. So by setting it to none, we're getting rid of that. And then we'll make the font weight to bold. So that was just the home navigation link of our nav bar. We'll continue on to the separate nav buttons, which is the add activity button and the add trip button. So similarly, we'll add a padding of 14 pixels. And then we'll add a border to the buttons. And this will be 1 pixel, solid white color. And then we'll add a border radius of 10 pixels. And then we'll also set the color to white, which is the font color. And we'll make the font size 20 pixels. And then we'll also do text decoration none. So that is the navbar styling finish. Then make sure to save your CSS code if your VS Code isn't on autosave. And then we can see this reflected onto our index.html. Okay, so as you can see here, when I checked the HTML file, there is no styling. So what I was missing was the linking to the style sheet at the top of my HTML file. So we'll make this link a style sheet, and then we'll link it to our file, which is styles.css. And then make sure to link this on each HTML file. And then now I'll go back and open the index.html file again. So here you can see the navbar is styled. It looks a lot better than before. It's orange, and then you can see that the add trip and activity button are on the right-hand side, while the homepage navigation link is on the left-hand side. So now we'll be going back to finish activity 2B. So here we'll be implementing Flexbox in our CSS. So many of you ask questions about the terms of parent, container, or child. So what we're naming our outer div element is container, but many people also call it the parent because it's holding all the inner div elements within it, which can also be called the child div elements. And these child div elements are what we are styling to have a certain dynamic look in our website, which is Flexbox. So firstly, to allow for Flexbox, I'll be doing display flex. And then I'll center the chip boxes horizontally using justify content. And then I'll be using align items to the center. And then for the elements inside the container, I'll be making the margin of 0 auto. And the width of the chip container will be set at 80%. This means that its width will stay as 80% of the screen, or the other div element if you put it inside of it. And then we'll make the gap of 20 pixels. And then that is the styling for the chips container. Now we'll be moving on to each box individually within the chip container. So we'll start off with Flex 1. And this may not make much sense at first, but Flex 1 is actually shorthand for making the chip box take an equal portion of the outer parent container space. We'll be adding a padding of 20 pixels. And then we'll be changing the background color. We'll be making it orange. Or if you want to be more specific, the hex code we'll be using is F7CDA3. And then we'll be aligning the text to center. The border radius will be 8 pixels. And then we'll be adding a box shadow to each of the inner child elements. And then that is the styling for the chip and activity view. Now I'll be saving the code and then we can see the CSS applied to our index.html. So here you can see the trips and activities view looks very different from before. The trips and activities is inside its own box. And this is Flexbox, making it align horizontally. And then as you can see, when you make the browser smaller, the boxes also shrink with it. And this is a responsive aspect of CSS that we can apply. And we applied it here using Flexbox. And then now we will be going on to our third activity, which is the upload trip page. So this upload form will occur in the add_trip.html file. And then we kept it a little vague because we taught you a lot of things. So we want you guys to use the references in our slides before or explore by yourself in documentation or by Googling. So the end result would be a add trip form page with each of the input.
Or do you want to code it for them? No.
Yeah, but then remind them to do the AS1 and then feedback. You take care of that.
Yeah. All right, guys, I know it's been just a couple more minutes, but our meeting today is like ending very, very soon. So I want to give a couple of last minute reminders before we have our next meeting. So firstly, if you haven't already, please fill out this form. It's not just for y'all, it's for us too. Yeah, we can't have food here unless y'all fill it out. So please, 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 please fill it out. So I'll give you guys like 30 seconds. Thank you, guys.
The next thing I want to say is that we will be providing the solutions for all of the code that we provided, like, or we've talked about today, all of the activities later today, hopefully, if not tomorrow. In addition, we'll be providing a recording of this entire session. I think today got a little bit cut off, but I think all the core parts, like all the HTML and CSS, were included as well. So please watch the recording again if you have any questions about the material. And then on top of that, please, you could read through our Hack School like textbook almost if you go to the hack.ucsd website. So you go over here and you go to Hack School, and you literally will like basically find in text form everything that we've talked about today. It is such an amazing resource. And if you want to just even feel more prepared for our next session, please go ahead and read through, JavaScript perhaps, or even React. So yeah, be good students and look forward to our next session. And Angela will be saying a couple of last words, just in case. And finally, sorry guys, so today was our first session of like Hack School, and we would love to hear some amazing feedback. Like one thing that I heard today was, hey, you didn't talk about like what A was or like what a link was. And we want to, take back that feedback, and we want to make sure we incorporate it in our slides and also in Hack School. So please go ahead and fill out these feedback form, whether it's positive or negative. We want to hear it all. So yeah, we really appreciate you guys coming out here, and we hope to see you in the next session. Thanks, guys. And Angela will say one more thing.
Oh, I was just trying to get on the slideshow,
Oh.
but yeah, thank you guys for all coming for our first Hack School. This is actually like, I have a lot of new board here, so if you haven't met them, like they did an amazing job helping out today's workshop. So yeah.
And they're
Okay. Yeah.